What do you actually do the moment worry hits? Not later, once you've had time to pray about it and calm down and get some perspective. Right then, 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, doing math on money you don't have. Standing in a parking lot before you walk into a doctor's office you've been dreading for weeks. Sitting in your car outside your kid's school, replaying a phone call you've already had 100 times in your head. That exact second, what do? Because here's what nobody tells you. If you grew up in church, or even if you started following Jesus 5 years ago, you've heard, "Don't worry, trust God," more times than you can count. It's on the coffee mug. It's the sermon title. It's the verse. Somebody texts you with a little heart emoji. And none of that is wrong. I'm not here to tell you that verse is wrong. I'm here to tell you, it never once told you what to actually do with your hands and your mind in the 60 seconds after the fear grabs you. It gave you a destination. Nobody gave you directions. That's what this video is. Not another reason why you shouldn't worry. You already know the reasons. This is what you actually do when you already are. Let's be honest about what that moment feels like, because I don't think we say it plainly enough. Worry isn't usually one big dramatic thing. It's a loop, the same fear, playing on repeat, at different volumes, at different hours. You deal with it in the morning, you think you've prayed it away, and then it's back at 4 in the afternoon, wearing a slightly different outfit. And here's the part that makes it worse. A lot of us have quietly decided that if we were really trusting God, this loop wouldn't keep happening. So now you're not just anxious. You're anxious and ashamed of being anxious, carrying a second, heavier feeling underneath the first one that says something's wrong with your faith. I want to say clearly, before we go any further, that second feeling is lying to you. And I want to say something else here too, because it matters. Some of you aren't dealing with everyday worry. You're dealing with a diagnosed anxiety condition, a real one, with a name, that a doctor or a counselor has talked to you about. If that's you, hold on to that, because we're going to come back to it. But I don't want you spending the next 10 minutes wondering if this applies to you. It does, just differently than you might expect. For the rest of us, and honestly for you too, let's actually go look at what's in the Bible. Not the verse you already know by heart, what's actually sitting inside it that we've been skipping past. Start in Matthew chapter 6. Jesus is in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount, and he says, "Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear." And then he does something worth slowing down on. He points at birds. "Look at the birds," he says. "They don't plant, they don't harvest, they don't have a barn full of grain put away for winter, and your Father feeds them anyway." Then he points at wildflowers. Not even Solomon, dressed in all his royal wealth, was as beautiful as one of these. And they don't work for it, don't earn it, don't stress over it. They just grow. And Jesus' question isn't a gentle one. If God does that for a bird and a flower, will he not do more, much more, for you? That's the picture. But here's the piece almost nobody stops to translate. The word Jesus uses for worry there, in the original language, it's a word that means something closer to a mind being pulled apart in different directions at once. Divided attention, divided care. Many scholars translate it that way for a reason. It's not just feeling nervous. It's your mind trying to be in two places, trying to hold today and tomorrow at the very same time. If you've ever felt like your brain was being stretched between 3 different problems before you even got out of bed, that's not a modern condition. That's the exact thing Jesus is putting his finger on. So he's not saying don't feel things. He's naming a specific pattern, a divided mind, and pointing at birds and flowers to make one argument. The God who feeds them without them lifting a wing has you too. Now here's where it gets practical. Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. Paul writes, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, Present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Most of us have heard that verse used like one sentence: don't worry, pray about it. But read it slow. There's an order sitting right there in the grammar. Don't be anxious. In every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests. And only after all of that, peace. Standing guard. So let's actually use it. Say the fear is real. Say it's your job, or a diagnosis, or a kid who won't return your calls. Petition just means being specific instead of vague. Not, God, help me with everything. That keeps the fear a fog. It's, God, I'm scared I'm going to lose this job. Say it plainly, even quietly, even in the car. Naming it is the first thing that shrinks it down small enough to actually hand over. Then, and this is the part we skip fastest, with thanksgiving. Not thanksgiving for the crisis. Nobody's asking you to thank God for the bad news. Thanksgiving alongside it. One true, specific thing, right there in the same breath as the fear. God, I'm scared about this job. And thank you, I've still got a roof over my head tonight. It doesn't cancel the fear out. It just keeps the fear from being the only true thing in the room. And then, present your requests. Hand it over. Out loud if you need to. This is yours now. Not mine to carry by myself. Only after that does the verse say peace comes and stands guard. Not before. Not as some entry fee you have to pay first. As the result, a lot of us have it backwards. We think, I'll pray once I calm down. But the verse runs the other direction. You pray, specific and honest, with something to be thankful for, and the peace shows up on the other side of that. Standing guard, which is a strange phrase if you think about it. Guarding sounds less like a warm feeling and more like a soldier on watch. Some days that peace will feel like relief flooding in. Other days it'll just feel like you're still on your feet, still functioning, still you. And that's the same promise, just doing quieter work. So why doesn't willpower handle this? Why can't you just decide once, I'm done worrying, and be finished with it? 1 Peter gives us the clue. Chapter 5, verses 6 and 7. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. Notice those two verses sit right next to each other on purpose. Humility, then casting your anxiety. Because worry is very often us trying to hold something alone. It's the part of you that quietly believes, if I just think about this enough, plan for it enough, run the scenario one more time at midnight, I can manage this myself. Peter's saying that exact posture is what has to bow down, not because your effort is bad, because you were never built to carry it solo in the first place. That's why this can't be a single decision you make one time and move on from. It's not a switch. It's a hand you keep opening, because the loop keeps coming back, and every time it does, you open your hand again. Now, back to what I said earlier, because I promised we'd return to it. If you live with an actual anxiety disorder, everything we just walked through is not a replacement for the help you're already getting. Praying like this is not instead of your counselor. It's not instead of medication, if that's what's been prescribed to you. Scripture was never meant to substitute for treatment, and getting treatment was never a sign that your faith is smaller than someone else's. If anything, using the good things God has actually provided, doctors, counselors, medicine, is itself a form of the same humility Peter's talking about. It's admitting you can't do this entirely on your own. That's the whole point, not the exception to it. Here's the deeper thing underneath all of this, and I think it's the part that actually changes how you see that moment. When worry hits, the real fight happening underneath it usually isn't, do I believe hard enough? It's, am I willing to stop being the one in charge of the outcome? Worry is often just the mind refusing to let go of control, because letting go feels a lot like losing it. And everything we just walked through, Naming it, praying it specific, being thankful right alongside the fear, handing it over. None of that is a magic phrase that makes the feeling vanish. It's practice. It's you, rehearsing, over and over, what it actually looks like to stop holding the weight by yourself. So let's go back to where we started. 3 a.m., ceiling, math you don't want to do, or the parking lot before the appointment, or the car outside the school, replaying that phone call again. Here's what's different now. You're not just waiting to feel peaceful and hoping it eventually shows up. Name the fear out loud, specifically, instead of leaving it as a fog in the room. Say it to God in one honest sentence. It doesn't need to sound like a prayer from a book. It just needs to be true. Thank Him for one real thing in that same breath, even with the fear still sitting right there next to you. And then open your hands, actually open them if you need to, and say it. This is yours to carry, not mine. And if it comes back an hour later, it might. That's not proof you did it wrong. That's just what a loop does. So you do it again. That's not failure. That's the practice, working exactly like it's supposed to. I'm not going to tell you the worry disappears the first time you try this, because that's not true, and you don't need one more promise that falls apart the next time life gets hard. What I can tell you is that God didn't hand you a command and walk away. He handed you a process and a person to carry the weight to. So next time that moment hits, and it will, you're not standing there with empty hands anymore. If this put words to something you've been carrying quietly, I'd love to know which part you needed most. The naming, the thanksgiving, or just hearing that you were never meant to carry it alone. And if you've ever heard someone talk about an orphan spirit and wondered what that phrase actually means, or you're just tired of hearing, "Let go and let God," without knowing if that's even in the Bible, I've got a video on this channel that goes straight into it. I'll see you there.